Also, remember, this is a free event. We want to keep it that way. So for those of you in the virtual land, if you haven't already, please help us by donating online. And if you happen to have some spare change or something like that, we've got some donation decorated containers here at the stage and also at the info. So please help support the Energy Fair for future events and future generations. So next up, we have returning again to the Energy Fair, Diamond Mariello, and he's going to speak on the necessity of permaculture. And we do have more of our builds going on over there before we start with Diamond. I think Cobb is happening over there. Papercrete is next, and then Cobb. Cobb's always on top, right? Cobb on top. Yeah. And what? Bobble? Oh, and they're doing bottle walls. That's always fun. Walls too. So that's ongoing event, evolving as we speak. And after our ending speaker, Diamond, we are going to also have some taiko drumming and some prayers and a closing ceremony. So please stick around, more to come. So if you please give a warm welcome for Diamond Mariello. Yeah, okay, I will give his intro. I didn't know if you wanted to do it, Nick. I can if you want. Okay.
Hi there. All right. Diamond began his career teaching geology at Temple University, where he received his master's focusing on catastrophic geology. Diamond's recent work on social and environmental justice initiatives, including urban vacant lot farming, GMO awareness, and other green endeavors, find even greater expression in the Oppenheimer Ranch Project and Magnetic Reversal News, his two prolific YouTube channels. He spends much of his time, however, with his partner Leah, maintaining their 10-acre permaculture farm in the South San Juans outside of Pagosa Springs. Welcome to the stage, Diamond Mariello.
Okay, let me configure this mic. Oh man. Can everybody hear me? Okay, tonight I'm going to be giving a little discussion about a topic you're all probably well aware of, permaculture, and the necessity of permaculture in our society. Now, you've had many discussions of different types of permaculture. In fact, a few hours ago was a great talk on social permaculture, but tonight's talk is going to be on the importance of reconsidering everything we do in this world in terms of permaculture. Now, permaculture is much more than an idea or a concept, and a lot of people describe it as such, but in fact, I'm going to go over in two messages, in my opinion, what permaculture means. And concisely, it's simply a way of abundant living, regenerative farming, and connecting to nature, natural systems in our community that creates a closed loop of sustainability. And I hope you all can agree with me there. In other words, it's a harmonious assimilation landscape and life forms in real time that connects food, shelter, energy, waste, and community, as well as design principles in such a way that each element feeds on itself in a type of symbiotic relationship. And this is something that in our current society, we're extremely far away from and what we're missing here. As far as permaculture is concerned, it covers everything essential to life. Permaculture is not only practical, but it is paradigm shifting as well as mind-blowing. And a lot of the topics we're going to talk about in the next hour, well, they just might blow your mind. Permaculture in general is about working with rather than against. And most of our society is designed against working against the earth. And permaculture is also about integrating other systems that support its own evolution. Most of the stuff we do is take and rape from the surface for the benefit of humanity, but in no way are any of the types of consumption beneficial to Earth. And I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Permaculture is about beneficial design, period. But beneficial in a way that's not just beneficial to rich people, to humans being comfortable, beneficial to the planet that we live on. And most people don't design systems that take that as the main consideration. And you can see where that's taken us. It's basically permaculture is earth care first, plus people care, period. And that's the whole system. And so we need a complete shift in the way we think about everything. We really need to rethink our relationship with nature as a whole, as a species. And today, most of us know that there is a dire need for rethinking our approach to current agriculture. And I'm talking about monocropping, increased pesticide use, basically the destruction of the biome and the planet that we know, which in the last 100 years has resulted in food in the stores with reduced nutrition and covered in dozens, if not hundreds of chemicals, which will actually kill you, give you cancer. I helped start the March Against Monsanto back in 2011 to bring awareness to genetically modified organisms, pesticides in the food stream, and how it directly connects to autism and cancer and celiac disease. And many normal people on Earth, when you bring this to their attention, they have blinders on and they just don't want to hear it. But we're talking about real science with real data to prove the points that I'm spewing right now. The actual reality is that everything we do on Earth must be rethought and reconsidered, not just agriculture. And it must be reconsidered deeply in order to return to a more natural and regenerative way of existing here on our planet. Almost everything that we do as humans is directed towards the sustenance of humans, our own species, and with little thought to others whom we share the earth. In many cases, this drive to improve our lives has resulted in the displacement or extinction of entire species, entire ecosystems that can no longer live in its natural habitat because the natural habitat no longer exists. And that's pretty disgusting. Well, I think it's more tragic because we as a human species, we're the ones that go to Walmart and buy the plastic junk from China that took thousands of hours to get across the sea, burning fossil fuels to get to our store. When a lot of that crap's going to break in the air, we're going to have to do it all again. And the debris trail from all of this capitalism and economic development, well, it's killing the planet. The reality, however, is simple. Everything we need to survive has been provided for us on our earth. Medicines, food, caves, places to live. It's all here, including the trees and the lumber to make more structures. But without a better understanding of how this all works together, and that's what we're trying to do here, in a regenerative way, much of what we know won't survive. Now, we've already seen the collective disrespect of the circle of life on our earth in all of our lifetimes. And I can give you a quick example here. Groundwater. Most of the groundwater on our planet is contaminated. I'm talking about the entire globe. Some estimates place the amount of groundwater contamination to be in excess of 80%. This is all the accessible fresh water that we need to water our crops and drink. 80% of it globally is contaminated. Some of it contaminated indefinitely, which means there is no amount of time that can bring that water back. And here locally, everyone is well aware of the contamination due to fracking and other extremely heinous practices, especially deep well injection, where they actually take the toxic waste from the oil and gas industry and they just inject it deeper into the earth because we need to toxify even deeper aquifers for even longer periods of time, apparently. And a lot of this is radioactive. So we're talking about aquifers that are contaminated. If the human species were to disappear and we were to repopulate the earth in 10,000 years and we went down there to get the water, it would be contaminated. And I'm embarrassed to be a human on this earth knowing this information. Our rivers, streams, and oceans are not much cleaner, unfortunately. Although local efforts to improve these situations have been ongoing for decades, I've been part of the solution. I worked for advocacy and clean water action in Philadelphia. I knocked on tens of thousands of doors to inform the public what they could do to help keep the water clean. Most people don't know it's bad to dump gasoline into a storm drain. Did you know that? Most people don't know it's bad to dump paint in a creek or in their backyard. And so I think a lot of the problem has to do with the education system and the lack of practical information that humans are learning. But regardless of all this activism, you all know that this is still not enough because of the things that I just revealed to you. All of the activism in the world will not bring back our resources. I can tell you that. And water is life. Without water, we're all dead. And without water, we're all dead quite quickly. And we contaminate the water, this resource, all in the name of comfort, right? In the name of industry, in the name of technology, in the name of making things better for humanity. Well, I want to ask you, is it better? Hello? It's worse, right? And it's getting worse every day. What are we really doing as a society to make it better? Talking points and politicians are not helping the situation. Raising money and awareness, I've done that for decades, and I'm sure a lot of people here work in doing that. And we just heard the answer in the last talk. It's actually doing something like growing food or teaching skills, changing the systems that are actually killing the earth into regenerative systems which rebuild the earth. And it's that simple concept we can be teaching humanity starting in kindergarten all the way through graduate school that will actually start to make a change. It's not that simple. I mean, it is that simple. We have to do this on our own. And I think as a society, we've known this is what we have to do. We need to all change the way we think, which is why we have the Crestone Energy Fair. We all need to change the way we interact, which is why we give everything away at our booth: free cannabis, free seeds, free information, free hugs, whatever we have, we'll give it. And what we receive in return is tenfold. I can assure you that that is always the scenario. It's never gone the other way. And a good friend of mine likes to say, one step at a time, one thing at a time, one day at a time. And now I want to share with you, unfortunately, some of the bleak facts about renewable energy and the green movement. Now, these are the things which are going to save the planet, right? They're going to save us from climate change, right? They're going to save us all and make us all happy. And as a paleoclimatologist, that's my background. I know quite a bit about the topic of climate change and carbon dioxide. So first, let me get this off my chest. That carbon dioxide is at one of the lowest levels on planet Earth in all of geologic history. In the most flourishing times, like during the Cretaceous when dinosaurs were here, or during the Permian when we had ferns that literally grew 500 feet into the sky and it rained 22 inches a day, carbon dioxide levels were over 3,000 parts per million. And at the same time, mammals were flourishing. So the levels we're at currently are actually 10 times less than some of the optimal levels in geologic past. And we're literally changing the way everyone has to live because of a few parts per million. So there, it's off my chest. Now, some of the bleak facts about renewable energy. Let's talk about the European Union. 10 years of the European Union's failed biodiesels policy, this is where we burn trees to save the planet Earth, has wiped out forests the size of the Netherlands in less than a decade. And this is according to a new study that was just released. Europe has burned 39 million tons of palm and soy biodiesel alone this last decade. And this is all because of their new green policy. This has emitted over 3 times the amount of CO2 emissions that the fossil fuel diesel it replaced. And now let me repeat that. Because of the Green Initiative and the burning of soy biodiesel and palm biodiesel, they have emitted 3 times more CO2 than before the problem that they were solving. That's insane. And at the same time, 1.1 million hectares of jungle in places like Sulawesi in Indonesia have been destroyed to create this soy and palm oil. And I don't know if you know, but this is the last refuge for the remaining orangutan population, which is now estimated to be below 65,000 because of soil and palm oil biodiesel production, which is saving the earth. The population density of orangutan is so low that there is less than 1 orangutan per 2 square kilometers. These are some of the casualties of the failed green policies: wildlife, as well as human life, and we'll get to that. Has anyone out there considered solar panels? Now, they started getting popular in the 70s, and I'm a huge advocate for solar at a small scale locally to create permaculture societies or communities. But what they're talking about is not this. Now, photovoltaic cells, they are a boon to the clean energy market, but that doesn't mean anything for humans on Earth. In fact, they're the hardest thing to recycle, and we'll get to that, but they're dirtier than anything that we can think of as far as energy production. And as the old ones expire, we all need to get ready for an e-waste nightmare. Now, solar panels are an increasingly important part of the renewable plans, and essentially, it's changing the way we will live in the future, especially during grid down scenarios when we all like to have power and back up our things. But they are also complex pieces of technology that become big, bulky sheets of electronic toxic waste. And right now, most of the world doesn't have a plan for dealing with that. Now, multiply that by the exponential increase in their use in the next 2 decades. And the picture is insane. Because less than 10% of photovoltaic cells are recycled currently. And with the increasing popularity of these panels, the toxic waste generated by the decommissioning, damage, and disposal of photovoltaic panels will only increase exponentially as time rolls on, which will lead to an unsustainable toxic waste disaster. And this is in less than a few decades. Now, just hearing that general synopsis, this is definitely not a solution to anything. And our new president, Joe Biden, and his administration believes that these renewables, electricity produced from wind and solar, are the magical solution for all our energy needs that will save the planet. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. They're 100% wrong, and it's easily proven with a minimal amount of research that you can all do tonight. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, wind and solar produced less than 9% of our energy needs last year. And to generate all the electricity just in the U.S. with wind turbines, we would need 1.26 million of them, which would cover over 300,000 acres. We would also need 11.26 million acres of solar. Now, if you just do the math on that, we have a long way to go of covering the earth in this toxic waste before we become sustainable. As of January 19th, the U.S. wind turbine database listed just 58,000 turbines. And on average, since 2005, we have been able to just create 3,000 new turbines a year. And at this rate, it will take us 400 years to become sustainable on wind alone. And It's kind of a joke, and I say it's a woke joke because people believe that wind and solar are going to replace oil and gas. And in fact, if they do, it means we're all going to be living in an extremely toxic planet in just a very short period of time. Because according to the same US EIA, the lifespan of a wind turbine is just 20 years. And the same with solar farms. So in just 4 short years from now, we're going to start replacing some of the wind turbines that were initially built in 2005. Another problem with wind turbines is the temperature. It gets cold in many of these regions, and cold weather results in the accumulation of ice on turbine blades, resulting in reduced power output, and on and on. One Canadian study showed a decreased output of 16%. But it's not the output or the decrease or they actually use oil and gas to then heat these turbines in something called a winter heating package. Completely insane. Now, there's a huge problem here. We saw the rolling blackouts in Texas. We know that renewable energy is really not the solution currently. And some of the things I just said, it's evidently clear that if we do roll it out in this massive scale, there is no recycling and there will be a toxic waste nightmare. A modern wind turbine produces electricity just 70% of the time, and solar even less because the sun is only out so long. So what do we do during the other times? Do we destroy the earth, mining rare earth elements to create trillions of batteries that last short periods of time that also go into the toxic waste heap? I doubt it, but it gets worse. And all the backups are oil and natural gas. Now, obviously, Texas didn't have enough oil and gas last year because we saw blackouts, which could have, if just something happened for just another hour, could have lasted for months. So you'd be talking hundreds of thousands of people without power for months. And this is in our future. This is it's going to slowly get worse, and we're going to see how this rolls out in major cities. Can you imagine if a few 100,000 people in a major city didn't have electricity for months? They're literally going to go crazy. Now let's talk about the impacts on nature. Everyone knows that hundreds of thousands of birds are killed each year by solar and wind, right? Raise your hand if you know that the wind turbines chop up birds. Okay, we all that down. But were you aware that millions of bats are killed by the same wind turbines every year? And we want to increase this by 20-fold. One of the bats, the hoary bat, a migratory species, could go extinct currently because of just the 58,000 turbines we have in the US. Now, even if you overlook all the gaping flaws that we're pointing out here, there's more. To build a 100-megawatt wind farm requires the mining of 30,000 tons of iron ore. It requires 50,000 tons of concrete. It requires 900 tons of non-recyclable plastics. And to get the same electricity from a solar farm, the amount of cement, steel, and glass is 150% more. And this is all more than oil and gas. Now, solar generation also requires several rare earth elements. We just talked about the rare earth elements required for batteries. Australia's Institute for Sustainable Futures says that a global gold rush for energy materials is about to take miners into remote wilderness areas that have maintained high biodiversity because they have not yet been disturbed. Yet to save the earth, we are going to disturb them. Now, the International Renewable Energy Agency has said that by 2050, the waste just from retired solar panels will be over twice the tonnage as of all of today's global plastic waste ever manufactured or produced. That's a lot of plastic. And that doesn't include the millions of tons of waste from worn out wind turbines, which we're going to make 1.28 million of that will need to be replaced every 20 years. And they are currently, the wind turbine blades, being buried on thousands of acres of upper Midwest farmland with a residence time in the subsurface in thousands of years. Because I don't know if you know this, fiberglass does not break down. So these are some of the tragic realities that we have to live with. And raise your hand if you thought green was a good solution. Yeah, it should be everyone, or else you're an idiot. But when you start to learn the realities, the policies, and the mining, and the scientists never told us because they all had backroom deals and they all got paid off, the earth is what suffers. And when the earth suffers, the human species suffer. Our health suffers. Our communities suffer. Our families suffer. The future suffers. We can stop this. And that's why we're all here at the Crestone Energy Fair. And the unfortunate thing is that none of the things that we think are green or renewable, wind, solar, hydro, I mean, they all have their concerns, but photovoltaics and wind turbines seem like a terrible idea and at a huge cost on the environment and humans. But I want to ask this, why are environmental groups ignoring this? I mean, don't you think they could hire a low-level scientist to figure this out? Yeah. Why are you turning a blind eye to science? All of the major problems with renewables are not technical. They're natural. And if we're trying to save the earth, then that's oxymoronic. The effort to save the so-called climate, we are destroying the actual environment, and it's lunacy. Now, the truth is that emissions from harmful pollutants on our earth have decreased in the US by over 77% since the 1970s. The major river systems near Pittsburgh and Philadelphia no longer light on fire because we don't dump gasoline and hydrocarbons directly into the rivers anymore. But the new solution is to create a whole nother toxic waste nightmare that's going to save the earth. When we've already done that, we've already reduced the pollution from oil and gas production by over 75%. And by focusing on actual renewables, oil and gas are renewable resources that were created in geologic processes on our planet, and they continue to be created today. We're all lied to 25 years ago when they said the oil reserves were going to run out in 8 years. Every year we discover more oil than we actually had in reserve when it was going to run out 20 years ago. Every year. And there are many hydrocarbon scientists and geologists that believe that oil is not leftover fossil material from millions of years ago, but actually a subsurface process abiotically creating oil and natural gas at depths and pressures continuously, which means that oil and gas are a renewable resource. And we've been using them for millennia. There's evidence of tar pitch and other petroleums used in torches and the manufacture of weapons and tools that go back over 10,000 years. So this is a resource that we've always been using, and I believe we will continue to always use, but we need to be using it in a responsible way. Replacing oil and gas with photovoltaic wind turbines to power main cities will destroy the planet very quickly. Now, the reason it has grown so rapidly is that corrupt governments have subsidized these toxic wind and solar farms to the tune of $70 billion. If we just spent half of that refining the oil and gas industry to not making frack wells leak and to scrubbing some of the emissions vehicles, it would be much safer than the green movement ever could be. This is just another example of government waste and fraud, intentional polluting the planet. And if you create intentional pollution, you actually pour money into other industries, right? There's plenty of corrupt pollution industry out there. And none of this has anything to do with actually saving the planet or fixing the climate. Because if they actually cared about saving the planet or fixing the climate, they would also care about the waste that they're producing in this movement, green movement. All right, so let's get to some solutions. How about that? Well, before we get a solution, well, it's really unfortunate that we really can't do much for the environment or for nature if we don't get somehow in a grip of the collective greed that we're experiencing, right? I believed in the green movement. I believed in renewable energies until I saw in the large scale processes what it is actually going to do to Earth. And it's all about collective greed. The green movement, I mean, Al Gore is profiting off of climate change, correct? And we are not burning up today, I assure you. The need of collective greed makes us look beyond what we've been provided, right? It's to search for something that tastes better or perhaps makes us feel better about ourselves. And currently with social media, it's about a thumb up or a like or any of that nonsense. Oh, they shared my video. And this is, as a society, what we've become. We've become lazy, uneducated, inept polluters. That's the general description of the population of Earth. How many times are you driving down in a wilderness area where you see someone actually throw just a piece of trash out the window? That happens all the time. And what do those people think? I mean, and it's so lazy, stupid, inept, and polluting. And that is the society we live in. Now, and then we'll also, let's talk about building resorts and rainforests. Let's talk about what Lee and I just saw yesterday, the defacing of petroglyphs on BLM land. The polluting of clean water sources, people dumping the trash in creeks. And the petroleum extraction and the deep well injection I talked about. None of this is common sense, yet it's happening everywhere on Earth. We as a society and a humanity, we're sick. And I say we, caveat, it's a reference to the lazy, inept, polluting human race. Not up here at the Crestone Energy Fair. Well, for most of you, I hope. I'm sure a few of you fall into the other category. Because we here at the Crestone Energy Fair are working hard to embrace the concepts of permaculture, which this talk, if you have lost the point, is about. We're doing our best to shape our lives around nature, rather than forcing out nature in order to accommodate our lives. Yeah, isn't that nice? It's what this fair is in fact about. And this message is more for those watching on the live stream. Perhaps the lost ones that I mentioned that might still be here. Now, we can all still make a difference. Small steps is all it takes. I know, because that's how I started. Collectively, we can change the structures at the top by what we do at the bottom. And I always thought this is how it rolls out. You need to use the system to beat the system. And if you ignore the system fails to exist. Now, the problem is we don't have enough people to ignore the system, right? A lot of us still have to go to Walmart to get a toaster because there's not enough of them at the wherever you shop, at the secondhand store or at a garage sale. So we haven't detached ourselves from all the corrupt systems that are polluting the earth, but this is a beginning point here, right? Saguache County doesn't have any building codes. So you can come in here and buy a small piece of land for less than almost anywhere in the country, and you can build a house at 1/4 the cost with some of the smartest people, the most alternative, regenerative building techniques that are being learned here each and every year. So that's one baby step, right? And I want everyone to keep it simple, and that way we can all continue to build on this, and by being an example, teach and watching what we're doing to do it also, and it can grow exponentially. And these are just some of the permaculture principles that we can all use in our daily lives to end the corrupt system and to begin our new system. We can all begin eating what's in season. It's simple, because most of that's going to come local. You can all start learning to grow food, which is why the #1 thing we give out is free seeds. If you can't afford it, you deserve to have it. And we should all have a society or a system that goes back agrarian, where anyone at any time can knock on a neighbor's house that's growing food and they have enough seeds to give out to 20 people, because you can only grow so much each year. Our seed supply is in the billions and starting to accumulate into pounds of different varieties, because that's just how abundant the permaculture lifestyle is. And then you meet other permaculturalists and they have an abundance of all these other types of seeds that you don't have. So now you're integrating and creating a network of barter. And that's another good step. Buying and trading foods with other locals, other local farmers in the community, and trading your skills as well in the form of sweat equity. And this helps you get to know your neighbors. If we need help, you don't call someone from a different state and say, hey, I need all these guys out here on my Earthship build. How about you start walking in a concentric circle like a petroglyph spiral in your community and knock on every fucking door, and you're going to find lazy people getting unemployment that also want to get $20 an hour to help you build your Earthship. Yes, you will. And then you'll be building local community with purpose that's learning skills that they can, in a skill set, you're literally creating the change that's going to destroy the systems. Now, permaculture also talks about not disturbing the balance of natural ecosystems or displacing any other living being, species, if at all possible. So when you go on a parcel of land, everything you do to that land should increase the biodiversity, the water retention, or the viability of that parcel of land. Everything. You should never detract from it. And if everyone did that, the biodiversity would heal itself, connecting small oases of biodiversity together as we create them. It's literally what's happening on our farm. Dozens of species that do not live in the desert are now living in our permaculture oasis. We have tarantula, and we have all different types of toads and lizards and fungi. We ask Alien Alan. We had dozens of different types of mushrooms erupting out of our permaculture orchard in the desert. Never happened before. And so this is just by taking small steps each and every day. We need to rebuild and rehab or reestablish damaged and natural systems. The ecosystem we see out here is not natural. This is caused from overgrazing and the overuse of water, this type of desert. But we can bring the natural species back here that once thrived in this region by simply researching our local areas, buying native seeds and plants, and putting them in the ground. And doing this by relying on natural water capturing and conservation techniques to nourish the depleted biome. And that's simple. That's swales and learning how to capture water in nooks and crannies. We can all learn about this on the internet or coming to fairs like this and listening to awesome people that have done it and have changed the environment on their own land. And this is all about swales, ponds, and catchments and not wasting one single drop of water, which is illegal to capture here in Colorado. But it's not illegal to capture it in swales. So you can literally stick your foot up the man by putting in swales instead of capturing it in actual cisterns. Oh my God, let's hurry up. It's raining. Oh, it's Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. It could be a rain dance. Now, we all need to design our systems and procedures moving forward around the principles I talked about in order to keep the cycle unbroken. And you can fall off the horse a little, but it's about just doing one thing every day, one small step, composting a little more, planting another seed, improving the soil in your backyard, doing something to protect and preserve the earth, which is being destroyed by the corrupt systems. And it's simple. By ignoring the system, we can eliminate it. That sounds pretty awesome. Now, I think if we all do our level best to follow as many of these permaculture principles as we can humanly do, the world will be a much better place. Even if your neighbor who thinks you're a weirdo, or your friends who disown you, or the government doesn't seem to give a about what you're doing, keep in mind, there are other people who do, like me. Now, in terms of the necessity of permaculture, well, I believe it to be self-evident, and you listen to my very best presentation. Each and every effort counts a lot in the big scheme of things, even if you think you're not doing anything. And because change is so hard to notice while it's happening individually, you won't know until years later what you've done. And I'm talking about chop and drop. Never remove anything from your garden, right? Add beam, make compost, put all of your organics back into the soil. I'm talking about gilding new plants together and seeing what they do, creating shade and providing, protecting more moisture, right, in the desert environment we live. It's about reusing, observing, rethinking, sharing, caring, reacting, and that results in abundance. The most important thing we can do that's simple every day is simply help others and give selflessly. If you can't think of one thing that has to do with permaculture, your garden, an old lady across the street. Once your mindset changes, your DNA changes, and you become a different person, step by step. That's how we grow. The attitude of gratitude. We can all start with that in the morning. And that gives us an entire framework in the rest of the day. No matter what happens, it's not as bad as I think. Someone has it worse than me, right? We all woke up and we're all breathing. And hopefully we're all grateful. You should never assume that your efforts go unnoticed or that they're inconsequential. If more of us started living this way, imagine the changes that would take place. And many of us in Crestone are living this way, including some good friends of mine right back there from Shangri-La, Colorado. I mean, they have raw goat milk shares in town that they can share with the community. You can come out to their farm and learn about some of the permaculture principles they're using. And each time we meet with them, we share more ideas and concepts that we're learning from implementing these practical things on a daily basis to help everyone. They just learn maybe some types of pigs to grow and how they can do that sustainably using sprouted grain from this valley, because sprouted wheat is 100% nutritionally complete for pigs. And if you have a biodynamic farming system, you can grow chickens on the pig manure alone, and then there's no pig manure in your farm. And you create eggs from pig poop. Can you imagine that? Pig poop eggs? I'd buy a dozen. So we can all do little steps, change the way we think day by day. That's why we're all here, right? And I hope I drove my message home that politics and corrupt governments are destroying our earth. So any idea that's coming out of those areas, we need to look deeply into it, what it actually means and what the end result will be. If you look at permaculture in terms of its practical potential and all the tiny things that you can do to be successful in life, and creating less waste and reusing everything and growing your own food and sharing it with neighbors and sharing that knowledge forward in a closed symbiotic loop that grows and grows into more information and more abundance, that can never hurt the earth. But that's not what they're selling us. Now, is it? But that's what we're selling here at the Crestone Energy Fair. So thank you for the organizers for coming. And I do have Lisa Bodie wants to say something. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, I think her point was, first of all, how many people are from Crestone here? Listening. How many people are not from Crestone? Wow, awesome. Well, thanks for coming to Crestone and the Crestonites. What we're asking you is the sooner we can put down all our differences and work together for solutions, the faster the corrupt systems will end. So, and that's the simplest we have to put it. And there's nothing bad about becoming friends with someone you might have had differences with in the past. Trust me, it's healing. At one point, I used to think everyone on earth was an asshole, right? Until I was given an assignment by a friend of mine. He said, I want you to interview 100 of those assholes. And so I went down to Center City with a notebook and I went up to 100 people I thought were assholes. And not a single one of them was an asshole. And the lesson was that I was the asshole. And so I changed. And thanks for listening.